The very first Black Knight in Marvel Comics appeared in the mid-1950s in the form of Sir Percy of Scandia. Black Knight #1 appeared as a 5-issue miniseries under the Atlas Comics banner, which was the precursor to Marvel Comics. That series ended in April of 1956, and it wouldn't be until 1964 when we would see Black Knight again. In that year, 1964, Stan Lee and Dick Ayers published Tales to Astonish #52, which gave us Black Knight 2, the second Black Knight, named Nathan Garrett. Garrett is the villainous Black Knight, the bad one, the unworthy one. Nathan, however, wouldn't be long for this world, as he would perish just 2 years later in Tales of Suspense #73. But neither Sir Percy nor Nathan Garrett are the Black Knight that will potentially appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Avengers Endgame, as most clues are pointing towards. As Yoda once said to Luke, there is another. That other was the third Black Knight, Dane Whitman, and he was born unto the world in 1967's Avengers #47. Following the long line of his lineage, Dane Whitman is actually the nephew of Nathan Garrett, both of whom are descendants of Sir Percy. It would be the next issue of Avengers, issue 48, where Dane Whitman would become the third Black Knight, kind of officially. Dane Whitman is the version that will appear in the MCU, and so we'll focus on him. I'm going to keep this concise and leave out some details. I just want you to have the most important takeaways and not get muddled in the details. But before we begin though, let me thank you for watching JLS Comics and pressing play. If you like videos like this, don't forget to hit the like button, share with your friends, and if you want, the subscribe button as well. We upload new comic book and superhero content weekly. All right, with that out of the way, let's get right into our Black Knight story. Created by Roy Thomas and George Tasca in 1967, Dane Whitman frequently appeared alongside the Avengers. The Black Knight has a rather storied history, but remains a C-list character, and that's perfectly fine. As Roy Thomas said, and this is a quote, he never intended him to be more than a secondary character, an Avenger, but not a solo star necessarily. Thought it would be fine if that happened, and end quote. Roy Thomas said he didn't like to make new characters since he wouldn't own them, and that's why he would revamp characters, and he chose to revamp Black Knight from that previous iteration. Over the years, Whitman's been a reservist and active member, formally joining the team for the first time in Avengers #71. 1968's Marvel Superheroes #17 features his first solo appearance. In Avengers #47, the second Black Knight, Nathan Garrett, was defeated in battle by Iron Man. Why was he fighting Iron Man? Well, he's evil, and he'd captured Happy Hogan and took him to his castle in England. He was an unworthy Black Knight who wielded a lance. Garrett fled to his castle, called appropriately Garrett Castle, to heal and recover. To aid him, he summoned his nephew Dane Whitman to help. On his deathbed, Nathan confessed his crimes to Dane and told him about his scientific discoveries and all these advances that he had made, but he kept his lineage a secret. A short time later, Dane discovered a hidden passageway in his inherited castle and thereby discovered the Ebony Sword. A ghost appeared. It was the first Black Knight, Sir Percy. After Dane proved his worthiness, Sir Percy granted Dane the Ebony Blade, formally making Dane Whitman the third Black Knight, and this takes place in Avengers #48. Hailing from this mystical line of Black Knights, this particular sword is enchanted, both powerful and cursed. It is said to be nearly indestructible and has the rather helpful ability to absorb and deflect energy projections in pretty much all forms, and part of its enchantment is the interesting fact that it bonds to its owner. And once this happens, the sword itself is unable to render harm on the owner. Even if somebody else wields it, tries to strike him down, it won't work. The blade hails from the Middle Ages, from a time of King Arthur and the magicians Merlin and Mordred. Merlin forged the blade from the minerals of a cosmic meteor. Because of the bloodlust of its original wielder, the blade developed a curse, a taste for blood, and every time the blade drew blood, it would make its user ever closer to insanity. And the curse ultimately led Dane to actually abandon the sword. And when he did that, he designed a neural sword. It was a sword that could pretty much cut through anything. It could deliver a shock to somebody's CNS, their central nervous system, and create a force field around its user. So yeah, basically a lightsaber. So cool. Anyway, Dane was performing some scientific experiments with physics and magnetism that actually attracted Magneto back to Earth. And this is when Whitman first donned the garb of the Black Knight, and actually when the Avengers thought he was his evil uncle. When Garrett was dying after a battle with Iron Man that I mentioned before, Dane was by his side and took all his scientific discoveries and all his methods to become the Black Knight, vowing to restore honor to his family. One of the things that he was able to do was genetically engineer a new winged horse named Aragon. He's gone through a couple, and we'll talk about those. In Avengers #71, the issue where I said Black Knight went from provisional member to full-fledged member, Black Knight helped fight and ultimately defeat Kang the Conqueror. A cosmic being known as the Grandmaster had given Kang the power of life and death over the Avengers as a prize for winning one of his cosmic games, but Black Knight was not yet a full member, so this power didn't affect good old Mr. Whitman. After Kang's defeat at the hands of Black Knight, the Avengers offered him full membership status. In Defenders #4, after an escape from imprisonment, Enchantress turned Whitman Whitman to stone. He had, during the course of, their being locked up, come to believe that the Enchantress loved him, but she didn't. So naturally, stone. When this happened, Valkyrie adopted the horse Aragon. Though petrified, Dane wasn't actually dead. His spirit had traveled back to the 12th century, and eventually he, came back to the modern day, and he came back with a black Pegasus named Valinor. Later on, during a mission to rescue Captain Britain from Otherworld, which I talked about in my Psylocke video, the Grandmaster captured both of them to be pawns in his contest of champions. It was around this time that the Black Knight was appearing in a UK magazine, along with Captain Britain, called Incredible Hulk Weekly. These UK issues gave us our first look at a winged helmet. His normal ones are wingless, kind of yellow and blue, and often portrayed with an aerodynamic metal fin up on the center line there, and it looks like a vortex generator on a jet wing. Maybe it's better, for when he's flying, and I'm just kidding, but the Romans employed, similar ridges on their helmets, and that kind of added strength to the design and provided the wearer with another option when they're in combat. One of Dane Whitman's love interests was the eternal Cersei. But there's a but here. He was also romantically involved with Crystal, the younger sister to the Inhumans royal Medusa. But Cersei was on a kind of mental downward spiral, and she was steadily becoming mad because of a villain named Proctor. And not even Icarus, another Eternal, could help her. Dane himself descended into madness. Between Cersei's plight and the curse of the blade, he had gone through a really tough time. Eventually, Dane and Cersei's magic bond fell apart. And this is right around the time that Dane learned that all the heroes in the Marvel Universe had died at the hands of Onslaught. Right around this time was also when Dane was selected by the Lady of the Lake as the world's Pendragon, the current one. It was 1997, actually, in the pages of Heroes for Hire. She gave him new armor, the Shield of Night, the Sword of Light, and a mystical horse named Strider. All he had to do to summon forth all of this was touch a pendant that he wore and invoke the name Avalon, and it would summon his gear and the horse. So actually, this is interesting as well. Dane is one of the few people to travel between publishing universes. Cersei and Dane ended up in a universe called Ultraverse, and Ultraverse kind of rolled up into Marvel Comics when Marvel bought Malibu Comics, and the Ultraverse in Marvel is called Earth 93060. Recently, Dane was seen in Europe, battling Hydra and Captain America's Secret Empire. He's been in and out of comics ever since, sporadically. So, will this Black Knight be seen in the MCU in coming months or even years? Will he appear in Avengers Endgame? He's had a resurgence of late. He's appeared in, obviously, the True Believer magazines in April of 2019. He'll be in some of those. He's had a Marvel Legends figure recently. If he comes from the Micro City in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is sort of akin to Otherworld, does that mean the Black Knight will kind of come forth to aid the fallen Avengers and potentially Captain Britain as well, since he was off in the other realms with Captain Britain? And if he does appear, I want to ask you guys listening, who should play him? That's my question for you. Go ahead and leave me that down in the comments. So that, my friends, is the Black Knight, Dane Whitman. But now it's your turn. I want to hear your theories, your ideas. Answer that question I just presented to you. Did I miss something you feel is important, or you have questions about Black Knight or idea for a future video? Let me know in the comments. Tweet me at comicsjls, and I'll add it to the list. As always, thanks for watching, subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.